Kent State User Experience Design Program and Information Architecture Institute. Our mission is an open forum for ideas to be shared and discussed among professionals and students in experience design. You can watch presentations of past speakers, get information about the series, and propose a talk of your own at uxconnect.wordpress.com. You can send us direct tweets at UXConnect, and please use hashtag UXConnect to tweet about us. And third Monday of each month from 9 p.m. Eastern Time, excluding holidays. The way that we'll present the 30 to 40 minutes, leaving the hour for questions and answers. Today is different. We have a question and answer series. You can ask questions directly to the WebEx through the chat feature. And Lou chat. This week we're happy to have Lou Rosenfeld. He's question and answer session and firing away with questions at any time. Lou will ask you. Lou, founder of Rosenfeld Media, one of the premier publishers of literature on information architecture and user experience design. Along with Peter Morville, he is co-author of Information Architecture for the World Wide Web, third edition, and the author of Search Analytics for Your Site, Information Architecture Summit, and the Information Architecture Institute, and has large, complicated organizations such as AT&T, PAL, and Caterpillar. To offer questions, I need to remind you to use WebEx chat to communicate your questions for Lou and make your questions available to everyone in the Dropbox where it says send to you on the future. I'm going to put you with some of these questions and start looking at what is coming through on the.
Should I?
Yes, you should be. Everyone should be able to see the questions, and questions here to start with as well.
I just see all your slides right
now. Window will come. You'll see the participants. There's a little for there's also a chat box that it will open up the chat box. You'll be able to see the questions. So if you see the questions yet, there's one from Jason to everyone, and as well that were advanced by David. Question from Jason is, will there be an edition of the Polar Bear book?
So, there was a third edition. The real big difference were between the first and second editions. I had an architecture thing that thinking about, talking about, and we think that's as good a term as anything for it, but how are we going to find people that the this is saying takes up, especially the web? That's what that was. And it was really not half as long as the second edition, which came out in 1998. And at that point, I didn't really have to explain the big thing, but what kind of problems it was going to force. For the second edition was almost a different book altogether. It was twice as long, good Lord, pages, and I think about 150 pages of my writing alone. So people figure out what to do with not sites from scratch, but what do you do when you have a huge site that's already control, and content is, which means trivial, and you're drowning. So that's what we did in the second edition of 2006. And that we're trying to do is make a few tweaks, a few changes, so that it would be better positioned to be a textbook. And I think a bit in that way, but in the second edition. And that's to do. But listen, folks, I have a life. I can't. I'd much rather be published. You can't really squeeze information architecture into one book. We had a hard enough time doing that with the second one. It just seems really untenable to do. So I guess I would write the same book about information architecture today. I think we need a different kind of book. So that's
Thank you. How would you change the book if you were to write it today differently? What would you do differently?
The real value, I think, of the first and to some degree the second edition, so to give one was to identify that this was a place that had been addressed, so this real problem, working on it, and also to give a lot of different people vocabulary instead of concepts. Frankly, it's really hard when you put together developers and build designers and HCI people and marketing people and on, when you put them in the same conversation and expect to actually be able to communicate with each other, it's very difficult today. That's about doing that in 1988 without as much common language. That's what we really tried to do, or at least we're able to do to some degree. We need something a little different. I think acknowledge that information architecture is real, decent vocabulary to use to talk about it and solve problems for it. I think we need solving problems, models, and so I would try to both a model or my process for addressing challenges accessible to all kinds of people, not just the people who have a job title of information architect, but anyone who's involved in research and design and experience. And let's not title information architect anymore. It's and more a type of or set of skills that people have user experience. So I think for people who are going to some information architecture that don't necessarily have the title information architect.
I have a few other questions on the screen right now. The first is, what's going on at Rosenfeld Media these days?
Eye tracking for user experience, and our 20th is about on it's called the Web for Everyone. It's about accessibility, which is for anyone involved in digital products. We've been publishing user experience books now for about 6 or 7 years, and we're really starting to momentum. I did a bit. I don't really think there's a future in being a book company. I think being an expertise company, though. And so we publish books. We have probably 7 or 8 more in the pipeline, and we'll continue to grow our catalog. But we also working with around we're up to 50 experts, user experience experts, who some of them are our authors, some of them are written for writers, book partners, and so on. For just really smart people. And what we're matching them with very high-level teacher manifest engagement whether it be mentoring or by training. So we have about 50 courses in our past, all UX related. And so we side large organizations that are committed to user experience and have maybe put the teams up to 200 people in-house doing UX, but they believe it or not, even if they have 200 expertise and perspectives. So our efforts are to give them that expertise and perspective. So we're really moving into becoming an expertise provider rather than simply a book provider.
Thanks. A follow-up question. He's asking, are old-fashioned in view of advanced, more user interfaces like Google Glasses?
Google Glasses yet, and I know that consume long content that way. And I've seen people talking about that as interface or consuming book content. I know from experience, but experience with thousands of customers that even on your computer is not necessarily the right interface for consuming that type of content, much to your iPad or your iPhone or your. There's a huge uptick in digital-only book sales. People that they use paper books together. They have different purposes and different pros and seeing decline in paper. We're seeing growth in digital, but paper. I'm not sure why it really comes to glass. But I guess you see.
The second question we have on the screen is, what are contributions of information architecture? Yes, it refers to contributions to the field of information architecture.
Broader field. Well, I think no one else is either acknowledging. I think the field for a while are kind of gappers and gap fillers. We're the people who go, oh, geez, nobody's doing this stuff. That means I'm the only one to take it on. And this was saying, look, there's this whole kind of that nobody uses unless it's absolutely awful, namely labeling and searching. It's not sexy, but important. So we're kind of to a team of practitioners out there and taking on the stuff that doesn't kind of impact a lot of other aspects of user experience have, but are nonetheless. I'm not totally got the question, but I'll follow up and push.
I see here in the chat box that did is saying is meant to how information architecture in reference to the world, what are the top contributions to the world?
World as in planet Earth or in chat box?
Is usually our host, and unfortunately today he has laryngitis and isn't able to host as we do now. But yeah, that would be helpful. trying to situate UX in the world of professionals that we interact with. So, do you see that, Lou, in the chat box? Okay.
I mean, I really conflate UX into very, very, very different things. IA. All right. Unless I'm mixing it up with this question here. Okay. All right. I'm trying to situate UX in the world of professions. So we be a lot here. All right. Like I said, I mean, I think for the broad world of mine, you know, we are that do unsexy but really, really important plumbing. I mean, maybe you could say we're like indoor plumbing. It's great to have, but you take it for granted. And when you're out on a camping trip, it really twice how important that stuff is to how often you go camping out in the wild. So what you're getting at, David, but contribution. And I ask myself, geez, to sort of fall down on the job promoting all. Possibly I care.
Yeah.
You finally entering a post-tribal phase of different kinds of practices that are involved in research and design. So, you know, in the let's just sort of establish ourselves as real. So, are we even for real? So that's what we were thinking about 15 years ago. And are like us? Oh, then we tried and other tribes like engineers, ability engineers, and so forth. And then, you know, after a while, this kind of falls away because it's just not that important. What's important is solving problems, and we all borrow from all different practices. And so, how do you personal contributions of IA or any particular tribe or set of practices? I just think what's important, and I'm just happy to be pleased to do that.
It looks like Michelle Ann asking, what do you think about methods such as lean or agile being applied in IA, and impact the use of traditional IA deliverables? It's things like site maps, wireframes, etc.
The deliverables, I mean, I think we always have to be deliverable agnostic. I think it ourselves a dangerous practitioner to align through the particular deliverables to create a wireframe. The point to illustrate what might be with a wireframe, site map, or some type of prototype. Doesn't really solve the problem. Now, you might have to, use some type of deliverable in a lean environment, in a non-lean environment. But let's lean and agile. I think one of the problems with it has been for years and years the desire and hire someone like an agency to help you do that. And when design inevitably fail because you have to maintain it since it launched, then design mode. Underlying expectation that maybe a hangover from friends, but that we have to get things right. And once we get right, and the total variables out there that are more size, whether and they were a year have different needs, different interests, and device which, even if it's fantastic today, will be stale. That we are in a slightly different business than we were a year ago, or that the economy has changed, or whatever. There are millions of factors that are constantly constant. So our sites have to constantly change, and sectors have to constantly change. So I think you have to be thinking about how your information architecture in an ongoing way, looking at it every day and looking for opportunities for diagnosing major that maybe didn't notice or weren't really even there and starting to address those. I sent you a link, Bev, for an article that gets into this about smashing, called tuning your site instead. A year and a half ago, that'd be great to bring it up to.
That link in the chat box?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no. There you go. So Michelle, I mean, again, have to be constantly tuning and tweaking. To me, it's not like the environment where maybe in the first place is and clear, understandable, but the diagram I'm recommending in this article can help you identify what those smaller designs would be to the resources. And I'll bring this article up. With the illustration where there's looks like a dragon.
A dragon.
Now keep going.
Okay.
All right, don't go. You see the dragon? Nope, you went over it. All right. Let me bring it up. Let me give me control. There it is.
Okay. I see it.
Okay.
There. I got
we context into a phenomenon called zip distribution, or the zip curve. Zip is a link, like a lot of us is interested in things like word frequency, and a number of texts and sorted out each to least frequent. And these curves that look like this, very steady, and on and on and on. And this phenomenon, like the searching that people do on our sites, or what content they want to use on our sites, or what applications, and on and on. So I'm showing search, a handful of search queries account for a proportion of the overall search traffic. And the same will be true for your content. A few documents will account for a huge proportion of your traffic. And features would be the same, and so forth. Down a little further, Bev, to the table, it's distribution except in text. There you go. So Michigan State University looks like over 7,000 times in this time period, and counts for about 1.4% of all the search traffic. 1.1 query doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think the fact tens of thousands of search queries in this time period, the fact over what percent is actually pretty striking. State University, you really, really want the search map to work well. So we have to look at, to get at 10% of mission traffic, cumulative percent takes 14 queries added up together to get us to 10% of the search traffic. So 14 is a reasonable number to make it work well. How many get up to 30%? Only 100. And so this is the head of search, and it helps us diagnose the few things that really are worth investing in terms. And this is a similar type of table for your hand documents would actually do of the work for users and so forth, because it's a fantastic information that is true for everyone and yet woefully utilized.
A question from Deborah, and she's asking, does Rosenfeld Media expect to start producing webinars, or are you focusing on in-person events?
We stopped doing webinars because there's a really fantastic of them that we now partner with that you already know. That's You Interface Engineering, Jared School's company. And we have a training course because of the environment and to be a hard time distinguishing a person 500-person conference. So what we're doing now is back in terms of our public events, a couple of virtual events a year from now on, and participated in the few that we've done, and they're successful. Focusing on are the books, and then very high-end services of consulting and training. And site, a company will hire one of our experts to come and teach on a day or two or three.
Thank you. Jason has another question. He's mentoring a UX professional, and she has learned the craft primarily from books. Do you recommend any other individual resources for building UX?
UIE virtual seminar recordings are really valuable. And I now have a library program, a subscription program, I should say. So then checking in on that. There's obviously fantastic educational programs like Kent State's for a couple. So I think ultimately the best thing is hands-on experience. So if you feel you're just starting out, or your college is intimidated by the whole thing and doesn't necessarily feel ready to take for paid work, work. What that favorite charity might be, or and doing some volunteer work for them.
It looks like Michelle Ann has a follow-up question for you as well. She says that she finds it very hard to keep a project like that and college without a clear to-do list of deliverables. Do you have questions for her?
They feel like unless they see deliverables that nothing happening. Of your process can work as a deliverable milestones. But I think to do anyway is to make sure that what it is you're doing in terms of research, in terms of design, and in terms of evaluation. Because to be able to do that on their own in the long run. They really be building internal capabilities to do this work. So not only you're clear on what you do, but see the value of understanding the process and your ethical and right thing to do, teach a man the fifth. You know, really, if they really are only focused on deliverables, I know it's pretty human, but that they're not necessarily worse. That if you let them kind of coast in that way, that you're not working in their best interests. So it's the easy thing to do, Michelle, but it's an important thing. And they find it uncomfortable working with some of these folks, and they feel comfortable come. They focus enough on deliverables. In the long run, you'll have a thing. They may not realize it at the conclusion of a project, but hopefully soon enough that even a year or two later, they'll see that there's value and you kind of as a deliverable.
Thank you. Looks like Bonnie said that you earlier faded out in the first part, so she's asking if you clarify that. The before UXConnect.
I think I mentioned virtual seminars.
Mm-hmm. And he says landscape New York City area that hit saturation point, and he's heard that the Midwest and Texas are beginning to emerge in IA. Thoughts about that?
Let's make sure I'm clear on the question. Jay, mean in terms of sound perspective? Because it really of need. It's pretty saturated here. And imagine that turning around anytime soon in the Bay Area. So if you can be here, it's a good. It's also really expensive, so there's definitely a job before I moved out here. Everything.
And Michelle, IA being about change management.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of riffing on the answer I gave her a little earlier about the process to some degree needing to be deliverable. The embark in organization change. The problem that a lot of us face, not just in IA, but in user experience more broadly, is that whether we're working in-house, we are increasing the position of being people who are changing. That's certainly why we get hired. And again and again and again is help with research. I don't need help with design. I need help with what's called skills.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solving at an level, conflict, senior leadership, and so forth. So areas that are the hard if you're in them. Get point is where all this organizational change management really needs to come in, and the need for soft skills really comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a bunch of courses in organizational psychology, and things say that even the really senior people, or fairly senior people in years build by something that comes with experience and pick up the ability.
Mm-hmm. A major discussion in Baltimore about this sort of thing. A question here from David. I think we've run this by you, so I'm going to go ahead and present it. And I'm going to put you on the hot seat per se, but he realizes that we're working on sort of complex and politically charged project, and he just wants to get your experienced information architect approach the healthcare.gov, I believe it is, and so is giving you a scenario and some questions based on that here on the screen. He puts as much as he thinks it's fast study for information architecture and user experience. Interesting to think about where you might go from here with this project. And the scenario here is healthcare gained national attention last month among reasons, and President Obama called you on October the 15th and hired you to coordinate an effort to fix the site. So questions are, the first one, what have you been doing since the 15th of October? You probably see the other two questions as well.
You know, it's all fun stuff, and I don't mind being asked this, and I don't mind necessarily being a critic. But doing work with a government is set up is ridiculous. I mean, it should be a surprise to anyone who's even an ounce of experience working with the federal government. I mean, we're buying the $800 toilet seats. It's not different. And so let's, I think it's a charged issue for obvious reasons, and so it's gotten a heck of a lot of attention. But there's for decades that's behind this. And, if you've dealt with procurement for any large organization, not just as bad as the government. And I can. That's so. My job these days is, unfortunately, dealing with corporate procurement departments. So the real issue is big organizations and how dysfunctional they can be, miserably are. Be that as it may, it's October 15th, and healthcare.gov is, and what are we going to do about it? I would say the search logs, quite frankly, what are analyzing search behavior? I'm not just a broad where you look at what people are doing, but I'm looking at contextualized search. So, for example, I don't know if you can do this. I'm not sure you can search from different points of the registration process, which I know is something that's been really broken. But if you look at what people were searching from, this to the process or the next page or whatever it might be, so what you want in a contextual way would be really, really helpful. I think search behavior, but call center logs, and I hope they're categorizing the inbound call center activity. I can tell you firsthand, as someone who runs a company that I know stuff quite closely, that's how we squished all the really big problems. Complaining about it's to figure out, and that helps basic diagnostics that I talk about in the smashing article. And speaking of that article, looking at understanding, and I think they could have done this in advance to large. What's the likely head of using the healthcare.gov site? What are the even before or you could look at the search logs and customer service logs. People to be able to do it. And all inversely too little on that and too much on unimportant stuff. You know, their priorities too straight. Look, they didn't do the kind of testing they needed to do. They did is from an IT perspective in terms of site being up and so forth. Really did testing. I'm not sure to delay that, to do a little, would have been smart for them to say, we want to get it right, we need another week, rather than we're going to launch it and, you know, full you know, what was going inside the link behind healthcare.gov, or even considering this and why what they did. I'm sure it'll all come out in the wash. But then the other, what, a month into the thing? That's not. And Massachusetts Exchange, when it launched, had, I think they registered something like 100 people, even for just one state. Ridiculous number, and quite a success. So I did a bit of short-termitis here. Launch could have been better, but you know, a lot of time left. There's decades left. I would have this service to be tuned and improved, and I hope they're doing that.
It's the same with UN organizations, and I believe it was JO or no, like was also agreeing with the large organizations being, you know, a challenge.
But let's not use that as an excuse, because look at gov.uk and sort of like the current of public in recent years, and for good reason. Service design, I think for them, what is application hoops, and I asked the lead designer about who's now here, and I think so. To have a kind of long mutual connection between the that did the design and research work. Bureau, I think it's David Cameron's office there, who did the project, and you know, support that effort. And we were. I have a fix that are here in the U.S. that are not in the U.K. in the same way. I got in the way.
Mm-hmm. Comment that it's tough under a microscope.
This microscope is, I think, in many cases unfair.
Mm-hmm. And the question on the screen, the third one, it says something about what are you dealing with such a politically charged project? Any specifics around in the political arena, that strategies that you might have used for a project and not others?
Yeah. Given the problem that we were just talking about and how that's a function of the political situation here in the States, but more or less transparency. And along the way is on almost any case then having to then and basically open it up, you know, rather than speak to this at a kind of medical level. We're talking about conversation about political parties and but I businesses, like enterprise class businesses, encouraging them to do is when it's better to, for example, the process and so that when you can do so I whatever my leadership role might be, and allocation or things like what is for content migration in my organization, you're going to piss someone off inside my organization, and they're me. That's okay. It's negative. Point them to a system that backs me. This is how I made that decision. It was something, but if you don't like it, that system for making decisions. Then that negative energy is more positive, and it would in the near term become part of an conversation, and we're going to be better because from their perspective, they don't know, and you want organizational conversation. So, Aaron, and having as imperfect as they might be for very open to engaging other people in those systems, I think is really critical. They want them before you evolve. They'll probably answer your phone call. Only set that they'll be to use that energy when you can get it, and hopefully it's something positive. Because in the current political situation in the U.S., I don't know. I think it's taken. So,
I like the transformational nature of it. I agree to the questions. There's more that came up on the screen here from Jason, I believe, and he's asking if Rosenfeld Media published an information architecture career book.
No. Good IA book, limited, and books that have been successful from a sales potential. We ones that haven't been that hopefully you don't. It's as a publisher, you're always playing the balancing game. You will one title, but I'm pretty sure that an IA careers book would be so limited. The sales to or the I mean, I'm starting to look at maybe doing a user careers book. What the brand would be.
Mm-hmm. What's really wonderful hour? We have a few more minutes left, maybe 5 minutes. If you have more questions, this one about experience and information architecture curriculum training would include project management courses. What do you think about that?
I'm the world's worst project manager, so I'm one of the worst people to ask. But I think if you're a project manager, you need to know something about the people you're managing and what they're good at, and what their potential could be. So, yeah, for product management as well. Like from Bonnie about. Was that answering the part of my responded earlier that faded out.
The version, it looks like David posted.
Oh, yeah. Oh, from backwards. About your curriculum would do well project management. Okay, I thought you meant project managers might need to learn about IA.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we missed that. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of project management is like one of those things that entrepreneurs are really hard to teach. I think we can project managers, we have to understand it, and there's certainly quite literature out there on how to do it. Good thing to consider. In fact, one of the things to complain about way back when I was a graduate student was when graduate programs assign all group projects that were given to would be a project manager. It just sort of assumed that would just kind of happen magically. It's not the case any longer. David, tell me whether or not it is. But grad school, if we're going to assign any group projects, could we maybe give them those little bit of education about project management so they make the work done?
Mm-hmm. Her husband, the PM, and discussions around project management and user experience. Little comment about that. Looks like Michelle, the idea for teaching in spring classes, and I don't see any other questions. Most of them, and I just thank you, Lou. Unless you have any final comments.
I'm happy to stick around for our 3 additional minutes. If you
Sure, absolutely.
we can call it a day. Do it.
Great. Well, I think the presenters were very and covered quite a bit of ground. We will get Lou and this one. So we'll look at Architecture Institute events as well with Rosenfeld Media.
David, I hope your laryngitis clears up soon, and take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.